1949, 12 countries were trying to achieve the same thing: defense against the Soviet Union. These nations signed the North Atlantic Treaty and worked together through the Cold War to avert their mutual threat. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was successful because its member countries shared interest in defense. And once this concern was alleviated, these countries moved on to pursue their own important but separate national interests. Now, we understand the importance of working together with other countries in the world. When it comes to NATO, the fact is that this cooperation is failing. We believe that NATO should be abolished. Let's look at the reason behind this under the harm, broken alliance. The first subpoint is that there is no common purpose. Businesses, teams, and groups are all held together by the same key component: common purpose. And this is exactly what is necessary for any kind of alliance as well. In 1949, NATO member countries did have a common purpose: defense against the Soviet Union. Dr. Jim McGower of the Lexington Institute writes this, quote, "What allowed NATO to function was a commitment to the single goal," end quote. This single purpose is what made NATO so successful. The problem is, member countries don't share a common purpose anymore. The threat of the Soviet Union is gone, and NATO's cohesion has gone with it. Joshua Stern, Seton Hall University, 2005, says that, quote, "The US, West Europe, and East Europe all have different security interests and see NATO as a means to fulfill those interests. Can NATO then continue to be an effective and feasible alliance with these different interests? The answer is no."
At some point, I believe that there's a failure in Afghanistan. European nations refuse to fight.
That was actually the second subpoint, security is right, but yes,
sure.
That was the example you gave.
Which specific countries refuse to fight?
France would be one of them. Spain also does not
France.
see.
Okay. So they don't have any soldiers in Afghanistan?
No, I didn't say that. Actually, there are only 6 member countries that are actually allowing their troops to fight right now.
Sure. Was NATO successful in the Cold War in that particular
During the Soviet Union, yes it was.
Sure. Now, is the Soviet Union, or is the Soviet Union stockpile of weapons still existent?
Regarding nuclear weapons or conventional warfare, what exactly?
Either one.
Actually, all their military forces have largely deteriorated.
Largely deteriorated. Now, is it possible that they can still be a threat even in a deteriorated state?
The evidence would show the contrary. There is no real possibility that Russia will become a real threat in the future.
Now, are you familiar with President Vladimir Putin's statements at the G8 summit last weekend?
Yes, I am.
Saying that there's a new Cold War coming?
That's correct, and that was because actually in response to a NATO policy.
And you believe a response to a NATO policy?
Right.
Now, wasn't he responding to a United States-Polish bilateral policy of a missile defense system?
Yes, the United States was placing a missile defense system in another NATO member country, the Czech Republic.
So it wasn't a bilateral operation by the United States?
No, well, yes, the United States was placing the equipment there, but it was.
So it wasn't a NATO program.
A NATO operation. It was conducted by NATO member countries.
No,
it was for the purpose of protecting European.
Did not Russia say it would be placated if, in fact, NATO was to take over the job instead of the United States?
Didn't Russia say it would be what? I'm sorry,
didn't Russia say it would be appeased if NATO itself took over the job of missile defense as opposed to merely the United States and Poland?
I'm not aware of that statement.
Okay, and you also said, I just had a question, is it possible to have different strategies to address the same threat?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, does NATO have mechanisms for intelligence sharing to fight war on terror?
Very poor mechanisms, yes.
Poor mechanisms, okay. Are you aware that the BICES intelligence network is through NATO?
The which intelligence?
BICES intelligence network?
I wasn't aware of that particular intelligence sharing program.
Sure. Can I see the copy of the one I see?
Actually, I do.
Okay, sure.